All right, we'll call this order of the Finance and Audit Committee, regular meeting for the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District to order. At this point, we have the public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the committee's scope, including items not on or on the agenda. Do we have any speakers?
There are no speakers in our audience this evening, or do we have we do not have a virtual audience yet. I will.
Outstanding, thank you. We'll move on to the consent. I'll entertain a motion on that.
Mr. Chair, I so move.
I second.
All right. Any questions on it? Can we get the roll, please?
Director Weber.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
And Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Excuse me, I do have one question. Do we not say that pledge of allegiance in these specific meetings? Not
No.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
And moving on to our action item tonight, we need to elect some officers. So Ms. Bonilla, that is your item.
Good evening, Finance and Audit Committee. We have the need to select a chair and vice chair for our 2023 calendar year. I'd like to thank Director Orzali, who previously served as our chair, and Director Wood, who previously served as our vice chair. So I would be happy to take any questions you may have. Hearing none, I would accept any nominations with a director's name and a motion and a second.
Well, Vice Chair, I think you're up for a promotion.
Try to avoid that. Nominate you.
And I would defer to my fellow Director Weber if you wanted to step in and be Vice Chair.
Absolutely.
I think we
Yes.
got, I nominate the slate of Director Wood for Chair for the Finance and Audit Committee, and subsequently Director Weber for Vice Chair. One of y'all has to second it.
I do need a second.
I'll second myself.
All right, we can get a roll, please.
All
It's
right,
okay, isn't it? You'll be fine.
Director Weber,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Wood.
All right,
Motion passes.
all right, thank you. And next we'll move on to presentation items with CFO Dave O'Toole. Welcome, Mr. O'Toole.
Thank you and congratulations. Good evening. Chair Wood and Director Weber, Director Jones, and Chief Haverty, members of the audience. Tonight I'll be presenting the bi-monthly fiscal report through October 31. There it is. There's the slide. And we're presenting tonight the bi-monthly fiscal report, which we'd normally be presenting and 2 months after the end of the period, which would have been the second meeting in December. Obviously, that meeting didn't occur, so this is delayed until this month. And of course, that means you'll get another bi-monthly fiscal report through December in February. So just catching you up on the calendar, and then we'll jump right in. So this slide is your general fund cash balance trends through the end of October. Notably, the green line is the prior year trends, and the red line is the current year trends. Just a comment on the overall green line, what you see there in terms of the trends is we are currently negative, which means we're borrowing from the county for that period that we're under the zero line, if you will. And then there's a couple of peaks that come up after we receive our property tax payments in the January timeframe for the first tranche, and then the second tranche we see the second step up in the green line there. That's when the April property tax payments come in. So to focus just on the back on the red line, it says negative 41. That's a little bit lower. It's a bit lower than where we were October 1 last year by about 14 million. Now, the reason for the difference, a few reasons for the difference would be part of the cash balance trend is intra-fund borrowing within the organization. So, for example, the development impact fees, we had 5 million in that last year. Station 68 came together. That was drained down to about 1 million. So that was a loss of about 4 million there. Also, we had PERS payments were higher this year by about 4 million. And those are paid in July. So that took us from the start of the year, it took us down by about 4 million. And then there's some timing differences in there. And so now to kind of break with tradition, if you will, I'm actually going to show you the next slide. So this is December 31. So I'm giving you the slide for cash balance for next year, for next month. And I just wanted to show you that it does narrow. The difference is now about 7 million. So starting to see more of a normalization, if you will, to align with prior year numbers. And then, of course, after that, we expect to see a big jump for property tax payments. So that's the cash balance trends. Moving on to total revenues. You've got three lines that are matching very closely together for the first four months. We have the red line, which is current year. We have the green line prior year again. And then the blue line you see now is budget. Because they're so close together, I actually, for the next few slides, I actually pulled out the numbers. You can see them exactly what they were. For the budget year, it shows that the blue line would be 19.9 million. The actual was 16.2, and then the prior year about 16.7. Now we're about 4 months into the fiscal year, so it's a little hard to draw conclusions about the difference between the budgeted number and the actual number. And incidentally, that budgeted number is a spread number that when we're building the budget, we spread it for parts of the year, and then we'll bump it up for in the months where we think we're going to get when we know we're going to get the property tax revenues, if you will. And so it's a little bit of it doesn't really show the variance as much as actually occurs. So, but we can drill down another layer as we do in these meetings with the medic cost revenues. And you kind of see what's happening with that portion of our revenues. The blue line is again the budget at 15.6, actuals were 14.3. So we're about what's the difference there? 1.2 million, 1.3 million under actuals so far in medic cost revenues, and then prior year we're about 600,000 lower after 4 months. So next slide is turning to the other side of the equation, the expenditures. So again, I've got the numbers pulled out because the lines track fairly closely on this chart. The budget, we budgeted 96.9 million in expenditures. Our actuals were 93.7, so about $3.2 million lower in expenditures after 4 months. And then we're about 600,000 where we were prior year, or last year. And now drilling down into a major facet of our expenditures is labor costs. And the budget number, the budget number was 73 million. Our actuals over by about 600,000, and then prior year we're about 300,000 over prior after 4 months. And I just want to note, I think for future reference, sort of some level setting here is that with the MOUs that were approved, this number will obviously deviate. We added about 5.8 million to our labor costs this year with that. So the numbers we're looking at now are relative to the final budget. When we're looking at mid-year, we will readjust the lines to reflect that. And then turning our attention to reserves. Reserves are kind of falling a little bit under where they were last year. Although with projections and where we have expenditures and revenues and so forth, you notice the table at the bottom there. We had 13, when we built the budget, we had about a 13.8% projection of reserve, but at the very last line there at the right, you can see it now looks about 15%. So if there were going to be no other changes, which we know is not the case, we think we'd get closer to that target line of 15%, which on the chart is the yellow line, if you will. However, we know with the MOU changes and with changes on the revenue side as well, we'll find out when we do the mid-year, which we'll be presenting next month, we'll be able to show you that more concretely. Okay, and then the CERT fund, the California Employee Retirement Benefit Trust Fund, that is our contributions for OPEB. That you can see that our earnings so far, since our contributions began in 2013, we're at 11 million. Those are the earnings, the total, and then with the contributions of 53 million, we're at a total of 64.6. I think there was the percent funded that we're currently at for the CERT fund is 24.6%, which is down from that peak we saw in 2021, where we're over 26% funded. So it's reflecting the market realities, and you can see it started to turn up again a little bit in the chart there. So suggest that means that CalPERS is adjusting their investments to reflect the realities there. And then, so your takeaways for the period through October 31. General fund cash is obviously trending lower than last year at the end of October by about 14.1 million. Those we saw when we looked ahead, that narrows to about 7 million at the end of December. General fund revenues and spending are kind of offsetting, if you will, a little bit. Revenues are about 3.6 million after 4 months, and spending is about 3.2 million lower than budget after 4 months. We think reserves are trending upwards from the final budget number where we had plugged 13.8%. And CERT performance did improve relative to the last time I reported. We now 24.6% funded and still short of that peak we had in June 2021. And with that concludes my report, and open your questions.
Thank you, Mr. O'Toole. And Director Jones?
Yes, thank you. On the previous, well, you had said that was about 14 million off, and you mentioned that part of that can be attributed to the 4 million that was used for Station 68,
Yes.
which is great. Yay, yay, Station 68. And then there was 4 million in additional PERS payments, and that's about 8 million.
Yeah.
Is there any other item that that helps contribute to that total of 14?
I'll give you, I won't get you exactly to 14 million, I'll give you a couple more.
Just curious.
Sure, yeah, there's, in addition to the DIF fund, you recall on the lease revenue fund and the, at least 2 other funds that we borrowed from at last mid-year. It was about 2 million. That also reduced the amount that we're able to borrow from in this situation too. And also I should have mentioned timing. A lot of this is timing to when the funds come in, and you can see how that number kind of squeezes and expands again and squeezes. So there's timing that affects it as well.
Okay, but those two $4 million items were the 2 significant ones that helped contribute to that 14.
Yeah.
And then the 2 million, that was an internal borrowing.
Yeah, that was the lease revenue fund and the lease properties fund, and yeah, it wasn't capital.
Oh, it's okay, but
yeah.
there was a 4422.
Yeah.
And that builds it up. Thank you.
442, yes. Mhm.
Any other questions for?
Unfortunately, I'm too young at this point. I'll catch up sooner or later. But I thank you for your meeting yesterday and the information you did provide me. I will certainly dive into this and be more prepared next meeting. So, but thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. O'Toole. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other business by this committee?
No, sir.
All right, we will go ahead and adjourn. Our next meeting will be February 23rd, 2023, at a time to be announced. And we will adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.